Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we are going to be doing Tyrion XIV, A Clash of Kings. It's been a little while since we've done the reread, and part of that is I do not do rereads in December because I am massively pumping out content on my main channel. And then also, unfortunately, over the last 2 weeks, and you probably might be able to still hear it in my voice, I have basically had a respiratory infection, then followed by getting COVID directly after. So I was sick and out of commission for about 2 weeks. And so I definitely could not record these longer videos because usually these are 30 minutes plus. And so we finally get back into the reread, and we're going to finish off the Battle of the Blackwater in both this week's video and next week's video, as we'll get into Tyrion XIV, which is Tyrion's second to last chapter. For a bit of a refresher, just so you guys know where we are in the reread, since it's been a while, at this point, Tyrion has taken command of the army, the Hound has more or less deserted, and Tyrion has decided to lead the men to try and defend the gates and to go outside of the city's walls. Meanwhile, Sansa is more or less at like a dinner party kind of thing with Cersei, and the tension is growing as Sansa has kind of been informed that she is probably going to be killed by Ilyn Payne on Cersei's orders. And so that gets us really to where we are currently in page 642. Tyrion's helmet limits his vision, but he sees 3 galleys beached on the tourney grounds and a larger 4th ship in the river firing burning pitch by catapult. Tyrion orders his men into a wedge formation as they stream from the sally port with himself at the front. Tyrion is leading these men not because he wants to, because he needs to. And also, you think about the ramming of the gate that's going on right now. Tyrion is trying to salvage a very hopeless situation in which everyone has turned to basically him. Sir Mandon Moore rides at Tyrion's right, expressionless in white Kingsguard armor bearing Joffrey's standard. And George does a really good job throughout this chapter, even though it's only a couple pages long, of really giving us a little bit of foreshadowing to Mandon Moore betraying Tyrion and or trying to kill him. He is very much viewed as like this character that has no expressions, that he looks almost like this stoic figure that is almost like haunting Tyrion's side. Tyrion also is surprised to see that Podrick Payne is armored beside him, and Tyrion tells him to go back. Tyrion's worried about Podrick because Podrick is a young kid. Podrick should not be in the middle of this war, especially given that Tyrion is on the front lines. It's not like how we see with other generals like maybe Tywin, where they're commanding from the back, where it's relatively safe. With Podrick, it's not safe at all. You're going directly into a war where men want to kill you and want to slaughter you. And so Tyrion is trying to deal with this, but let's be honest, he doesn't have the time to do it. They're right now charging into Stannis' men. Podrick, though, insists he is Tyrion's squire, and Tyrion orders him to stay close. The group rides tightly together along the city walls, the royal banner flying crimson and gold. They move from a walk to a trot, circling wide around the base of a tower, arrows raining down from the walls, while stones fall blindly, striking ground, water, armor, and men. It is literally hell on these beaches, and you're seeing some of the reasons why the Hound was not willing to fight anymore. Now we know it was mainly because of the fire, but it builds the chaotic situation. And also George does another great job of foreshadowing the end of this chapter, showing Podrick's loyalty to Tyrion. How many squires do you think would really do this? You know, these are young, basically kids at this point, maybe young teenagers, you could say. They're being thrust into a situation in which it's life or death. Podrick's not blind to that fact, but he is loyal to Tyrion. Tyrion sees the King's Gate ahead, where attackers struggle to bring a massive iron-headed ram against it. Archers from the ships support the assault, firing at defenders on the gatehouse, and Tyrion orders lances and urges his horse into a canter. He is ordering the charge on the men at the gates. As we get into page 643. The ground is slick with mud and blood, and Tyrion's horse stumbles over a corpse but keeps its footing. And that's another, big part of warfare that I feel like isn't talked about a lot, that George does a really great job of in this chapter, is even though horses are a great advantage, you very much are reliant on the horse being able to navigate tough situations where it's very slick, it's uneven footing, and at any point, if a horse was to break its leg or to slip, that could be the death of you. You might be injured and pinned against a horse, for instance. Funny enough, I bring that up as that's going to be a big part of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. We see a specific character that has this happen to them as well. It's really nice that George also paints the stresses of horses in these kind of battles, and it also is going to play out in another way later on when Tyrion loses his horse. Men beneath the gate scramble to brace as Tyrion raises his axe and shouts King's Landing as the charge surges forward. Sir Mandon lowers his lance at the last moment and kills a man with Joffrey's banner before the shaft breaks. Tyrion strikes down a knight in a fox crest surcoat, crushing his face and numbing his shoulder from the impact. A spear hits Tyrion's shield while Podrick rides beside him, slashing at enemies as they pass. Cheers rise from the city walls as the attackers abandon the battering ram, fleeing or turning to fight. This is a huge moment for Tyrion as he's been able to save the gate. And if they were able to get through any of these gates or any of these entry points, it could mean the collapse of King's Landing. Tyrion leading the men, it's something that Tyrion is not used to. Outside of some of the times the Mountain Clan's men, Tyrion has never felt, this love or appreciation from the people. And we know it's not exactly from a love of Tyrion, but because they're realizing, we might be saved. And so that's really interesting because you think about the way Tyrion is going to think about these things later on, especially in A Storm of Swords. It's moments like these where people are cheering him on, where later on they're going to turn on him completely. But you also got to be thinking, if you are these men at the gate, you're not a horse, right? So you already have that disadvantage. And then also, on the other hand, you are going to be extremely tired from using this ram on the gate for so long, and uses that to defeat this assault on the gate. Tyrion rides down an archer, kills a spearman, and deflects a blow from another foe. Tyrion horses rears at the ram, but Sir Mandon leaps it cleanly, cutting through enemies with lethal precision. The enemy begins to flee as Tyrion urges his horse forward and realizes Podrick is no longer in sight. But as Tyrion is stopping and trying to get a sense of the battlefield and where Podrick is, an arrow narrowly misses Tyrion's eye slit, jolting him with fear. And you got to remember, what we're going to see in a lot of warfare is, if you're a common soldier, you're going to aim for the leaders, because if you take out the leaders, maybe there'll be confusion, disarray, and Tyrion is very easy to spot out. He's smaller in stature, he's going to be kind of more richly dressed than your average soldier, and Tyrion kind of realizes that. Tyrion decides to move again to not make himself an easy target, riding among corpses as burning galleys clog the Blackwater. Wildfire burns in the river, sending green flames into the air, and fighting continues along the riverfront as Lannister men try to drive the attackers back into the water, as Tyrion orders his men to ride for the Mudgate. And yeah, in the show, they combined this. In the show, we don't really see the King's Gate, we only see the Mud's Gate. That's where the main assault happens in the show. So we're going to see kind of those combined events. I talked about this in the last Tyrion chapter, where they kind of combine his two speeches. So Tyrion has his main speech, which we had in the last chapter of rallying his men, then also mixed with like the very end of that speech in the show, which is going to be seen here in this chapter. The part specifically where he says, "Those are brave men, let's go kill them." That part's in this chapter, so I just wanted to point that out when there's those little tiny details of adaptation in the book and the show. But also what this does is show you more of that chaos of the war. Tyrion's not able to simply find his squire who was just at his side. There's wildfire everywhere, burning and lighting up the battlefield with green fire. But at this, we get into page 644. Sir Mandon shouts from the Mudgate as the charge begins again with cries of King's Landing and Half-Man rising from the men. Tyrion hears this and is almost like confused, like where did they hear this from? Did they learn it from the Mountain Clansmen? And once again, it's people following Tyrion into battle and supporting him, something Tyrion is not exactly used to, but at this point, given all the events of A Game of Thrones, he's become more accustomed to being a leader, especially in war. Tyrion hears the chaos of battle through his helm, screams, fire, war horns, and trumpets, with flames everywhere. A massive stone crashes into a galley on the Blackwater, and Tyrion cannot even tell whose ship it really is at this point. The wedge formation dissolves, leaving each man to fight on his own. At this point, it's nice and all to have, formation to try and stay disciplined, and that's usually why in war, the more disciplined side usually wins. But here, it's a situation where the war is just breaking out. The battle is breaking out, where every man is fighting their own little war. It's no longer like our army versus your army. It's every man for themselves is kind of what it feels like, the way George describes it. Tyrion continues forward despite thinking he should have turned back. Only a handful of men still follow him, the rest dead or fled, as he struggles to keep his horse moving towards the east and through the fire. Even though we've seen Tyrion get this win defending the King's Gate, he's still losing a ton of men. Men are losing morale. Even with the win, They're seeing the losses. Maybe friends or people they've known are dying, the horribleness of war where people's guts are coming out. It's just a terrible place to have to be in. Tyrion then sees burned and drowning men crawl from the river, and Tyrion leads his troop among them, killing those still able to stand. Tyrion's world narrows to what he can see through his eye slit as larger knights flee from him or die. He shouts Lannister while fighting, his arm red with blood up to the elbow, and hears the men calling him half-man again. Tyrion feels battle fever, losing fear, pain, and awareness of time as he fights on in a drunken fury. A spearman attacks, and Tyrion cuts off the spearhead, and then the man's hand and arm. An archer with a bow attacks with an arrow, but Tyrion's horse kicks him down as Tyrion laughs. Tyrion chops down one of Stannis' fiery heart banners planted in the mud, as a knight attacks him with a great sword, striking his shield until someone kills the knight with a dagger, unseen by Tyrion. Now, Tyrion's going to talk about this a little bit in the next page specifically, but at this point, if you're Tyrion, you have no time to think. You're fighting for your life. You're fighting for everything you've ever known. And this isn't necessarily a great comparison, but if you think about modern sports, there's a lot of athletes that talk about when they're in the moment, there's almost like nothing else is going on. I've seen this a lot specifically with boxers. They talk about when they're so dialed in, they don't even hear the crowd. They're not even aware of what's going on. They're aware of their opponent and just focusing in on winning. And that's kind of similar to what Tyrion's experiencing. Tyrion doesn't have the time to think about fear. He doesn't have the time to feel scared or any of this stuff. He has time to focus on killing this next man who's trying to kill him, then moving to the next man, and just trying to get through this battle. That's why he's not recognizing pain or things like that. The easiest way I can kind of explain this for myself is, so I've been sick for like 2 weeks, like I mentioned in the intro, and one thing I noticed in those 2 weeks, especially when I got COVID, when it got worse, and I started to get more like flu-like symptoms, is I didn't notice my back pain as much. Because your body is so focused on, whether it's your throat hurting, your ears hurting, you have the chills, or you have a fever. I had all these things, by the way, that your brain is not processing your back pain nearly as much because it's feeling some of this other stuff much more keenly. I kind of look at that with Tyrion here, is it's like he's not feeling a lot of his injuries. He's not feeling a lot of the weight of the armor and stuff like he's going to talk about because he's just got other things in his mind right now. As we get into page 645. A knight farther downriver calls out to yield, offering a lobstered gauntlet while lying in a puddle of water. Tyrion leans down to accept the pledge as a pot of wildfire bursts overhead, revealing the puddle is actually blood, not water, and the gauntlet still contains the knight's hand. A horrible sight, and Tyrion flings the gauntlet away as the knight continues to beg for mercy and to yield. A man-at-arms sees Tyrion's bridle and attacks with a dagger, and Tyrion kills him with his axe. Tyrion sees a white-armored knight and realizes it's Sir Balon Swan, not Mandon Moore. Sir Balon Swan, spattered with gore, points downriver with his mace and tells Tyrion to look. Tyrion sees the Blackwater choked with blood, fire, and wreckage beneath the sky lit red, orange, and green. Men-at-arms are climbing from a broken galley smashed into a pier, with more emerging from the river. Tyrion sees dozens of galleys jammed together, hulls locked, oars crossed, and rigging tangled. The wrecked ships form a bridge across the Blackwater, allowing men to cross on foot or horseback, as hundreds of Stannis' men are using the wreckage to advance despite fire, blood, and collapsing ships. So even though Tyrion has pulled off this masterful plan that has very much delayed Stannis' crossing, destroyed much of his fleet, it's still going wrong for Tyrion. Because if these men can cross these bridges and get to their side of the Blackwater, it could be catastrophic. Tyrion does not have many men left, and so he has to still try and press his advantage, trying to choke up their crossing on the bridges and defend King's Landing. Tyrion realizes they have created a bridge for their enemy and admires their courage. It takes a lot of courage to go on boats which are very loosely tangled up together. They are not the best, especially if you're trying to jump a horse from one boat to the next, as we'll see with Tyrion specifically in the coming pages. And the real question you also have to ask, is this really courage, or is this just blind stupidity? I guess it could be just a mixture of both. Tyrion tells Sir Balon Swan that those are brave men, and then says, let's go kill them. So that's the end of the speech that we see in the show. It's kind of Tyrion's second big zinger of the Battle of the Blackwater. as we get into page 646. Tyrion leads the charge along the riverfront through smoke, ash, and burning debris, with his men Sir Balon Swan and Sir Manon Moore behind him. The enemy breaks before them, fleeing back into the water and knocking others aside in their panic. The bridge begins at a half-sunken empty galley named Dragonsbane, its hull ripped open by the river obstacles Tyrion had placed. A Celtigar spearman kills Sir Balon Swan's horse, spilling him from the saddle before he can dismount. Tyrion strikes the spearman as he rides past, unable to stop his own charge. Tyrion's horse is now in control. It's less about Tyrion and more about his horse being ushered to go from this ship to the next, and also his horse is probably freaked out on the situation going on, having to leap from ship to ship. Tyrion's horse leaps from the quay onto the galley, lands badly, and both Tyrion and his axe are thrown onto the deck. His horse breaks a leg and screams, and Tyrion, unfortunately, slits its throat to end its suffering, soaking himself in blood. And that is the issue, and you see this a lot in medieval times, is horses are only as good as their usefulness. And especially when these things can be very painful, there's not a lot of great medical care for a horse breaking their leg or something like that. Tyrion is forced to put down his own horse. And at this point, this is where the battle kind of changes, because the whole time Tyrion has been a horse, he's kind of had an advantage. He's been able to, be swinging above them, to circle around them. Now, at this point, the advantage has kind of changed. Tyrion regains his feet and continues fighting across flooded, tilted decks as enemies swarm him. He kills, wounds, or drives off attackers, constantly facing new foes. He loses his dagger and ends up fighting with a broken spear, shouting curses and pursuing fleeing men. Tyrion climbs from ship to ship as the battle rages across the makeshift bridge. Sir Balon Swan and Sir Manon Moore fight beside him, gracefully and deadly, back to back against Velarion's spearmen. Tyrion's own fighting is brutal. He's willing to kill people from behind, or he's throwing men into the river. Tyrion is fighting what you would say is dishonorable, not exactly chivalrous, but in terms of war, it's you or the other person. You do what you got to do to try and survive. And this is what we see just throughout war in general. Look at World War I, World War II, the Civil War, any other wars you can think of, the Napoleonic Wars, whatever you want to say. Stuff like this happens. It's war. Arrows strike around him, one lodging in his armor without him noticing. Bodies fall from above, blood spraying into Tyrion's helm as stones crash down and pulverize men. The bridge begins to shudder and twist as ships break apart beneath him. Water floods into Tyrion's helm, forcing him to tear it off and crawl along the listing deck. At this point, the bridge is breaking, and unfortunately, Tyrion is on the bridge. He realizes the ships are tearing loose and the bridge is collapsing, and a thunderous crack sounds. The deck lurches, and Tyrion slides back down into the river. And now you have the next big issue is, remember what Davos talked about in his opening chapter for this battle? When you're wearing heavy armor, when you're wearing plate and chainmail, stuff like that, you're going to drown. You're going to sink. You're not going to be able to swim up. You're not going to be able to float, any of those kind of things. That's kind of what Tyrion is also going to struggle with if he is pushed into the water fully. As we get into page 647, the deck is so steep that Tyrion must climb upward, dragging himself along a snapped line inch by inch. He sees a drifting hulk spinning downstream as men leap from it, wearing mixed banners that no longer seem to matter. Fires burn both upstream and down the river. On one side is a chaotic battle of banners, shield walls, cavalry, and blood, while on the other, the Red Keep looms above, firing flames. And Tyrion is not able to process what he's seeing yet, but what Tyrion is experiencing, what is going on at this very moment, is that Tywin, the Lannisters, the Tyrells, they've arrived to the Battle of the Blackwater and are beginning their fight along Stannis' men in his encampment. For Stannis specifically, you got to be thinking this is completely a surprise. You had no idea another army, especially an army that would be your size, if not larger, is coming to attack you. They're going to be fully mounted and ready. You are not. You've been trying to cross. You've been taking blow after blow in terms of defeats, in terms of Tyrion's trap, the bridge. Everything's going wrong. And so the morale of Stannis' camp specifically is going to be a lot lower than, say, like Tywin coming to this battlefield. And that is not also considering some of the other stuff going on, like Garland wearing Renly's armor. And we'll talk about that more in Sansa's chapter, as she is the chapter we get all the reveals of the conclusion of the battle through. but just to kind of paint what's going on in the background of Tyrion's chapter. Tyrion becomes disoriented, briefly thinking the castle and Stannis' forces have switched sides, but he realizes the deck is turning and he is being spun around. Exhausted and in pain, Tyrion struggles to make sense of the fighting and notices his wounded shoulder and the arrow lodged there. He knows he must get off the ship as fire waits downstream if the wreck breaks loose. Tyrion hears someone calling his name and weakly calls back for help. He pulls himself up the slanted deck and nearly falls into the water when the hull slams into another galley. Tyrion struggles to hold on, nearly spent of strength, but just at this moment, Sir Mandon Moore appears on the next ship, reaching out his hand to Tyrion. Tyrion reaches for Sir Mandon's hand despite the flames reflecting off his white armor. But at the last moment, Tyrion notices something. This is what makes Tyrion such a fascinating character. It's something that the show didn't really do at all, but Tyrion notices that Sir Mandon Moore is offering his left hand. Now, if you're somebody that is very dominant with your right hand, why would you offer your left? And that's something that Tyrion notices right here, as Tyrion is suddenly struck beneath the eyes by a sword, feeling a burst of pain. But luckily for Tyrion, in like this millisecond of reaction, he kind of goes backwards, and it's enough to where the sword doesn't like completely kill Tyrion, going through like his skull and his head and completely killing him. It is just something that kind of like takes some skin off, takes his nose off. It's not fatal though. And so Tyrion barely survives this attack by Sir Mandon. Tyrion then falls into the cold water, flailing and fearing he will not surface. Tyrion grabs the broken end of an oar and climbs up foot by foot. His eyes fill with water, his mouth with blood, and his head throbs violently. And yeah, Tyrion has nearly died. He just had an extremely awful wound that he just received, along with all the other stuff going on, right? Like he had a shoulder wound in his shoulder. It's a terrible situation Tyrion finds himself in. As we get into page 648. Tyrion clings to the oar and focuses only on reaching the deck. He finally rolls over the side and lies flat on his back, breathless and exhausted. He's basically given up. If Sir Mandon Moore is going to kill him, he's going to kill him. Green and orange wildfire streaks overhead, briefly striking him as beautiful. But at this moment, Sir Mandon Moore blocks out the light as he looms over him, a white shadow with dark eyes. Tyrion is too weak to resist as Sir Mandon presses a sword point to his throat. Sir Mandon grips the hilt with both hands, preparing to kill Tyrion. But then Sir Mandon suddenly lurches sideways into the rail as the ships collide. Sir Mandon is thrown overboard, vanishing with a shout and a splash. And the end of Sir Mandon Moore. And all that foreshadowing we've had throughout the entire book about Sir Mandon and how we shouldn't really trust him. He's very dangerous. Finally happens here. But also it paints a very interesting mystery for the last chapter and for the next book as a whole. Who ordered the execution of Tyrion? Who wanted him dead? Was it Cersei? Was it Joffrey? Who was it? The hulls slam together, jolting the deck violently as someone kneels over Tyrion and tells him to be still because he is badly hurt. Tyrion weakly calls out for Jaime, assuming only his brother could have saved him, but he hears a boy's voice instead, sounding like Podrick Payne. Podrick never flees from Tyrion's side and is the one to save Tyrion's life. And that's how we end Tyrion 14, A Clash of Kings. Tyrion's second to last chapter, and really this is the end of the Battle of the Blackwater. We don't really see the end until Sansa's chapter because we hear of what truly happened. We get the resolution to the Hound's arc of this book, of Cersei's arc of this book, really. For Sansa as well. In reality, this is the end of the battle. You know, we get three main chapters that cover the Battle of the Blackwater in terms of what's actually happening in both Davos's last chapter in Davos 3, Tyrion 13, and then Tyrion 14. So thank you guys all for watching. It's a really somber feeling getting towards the end of A Clash of Kings. I feel like I say this at the end of every video, but especially now where, you know, we're basically done with the Battle of the Blackwater. We only have one Tyrion chapter left, and that's crazy to think about because he is like the Ned of this book. He has 15 chapters, by far the most of any character in this book. And so when you're getting to the end of it, it's like, it kind of starts to settle in that it's like, yeah, we're going to be heading into a Storm of Swords soon. Now, because of my illnesses, it kind of extended when we're going to finish A Clash of Kings. It'll be more like probably March now instead of like the end of February. But I'm really looking forward to finishing up this book. We've still got some really great chapters. I'm really looking forward to Arya's last chapter specifically. and then heading into A Storm of Swords, which is by most people their favorite book of the series. I can't really fault you for that. It's my second favorite of the series, and I think objectively it's probably the best book, even though this is my favorite in Clash. And so it's a really awesome time to be able to cover both my favorite book, then my second favorite book in the series, and I've also already covered Game of Thrones, which is my third favorite of the series. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.